Good morning. San Mateo County Planning Commission meeting of April 26, 2023 will please come to order. Please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mercedes, could we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Ketchum?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Serrano-Kwan?
Here.
Thank you. Chair Gupta?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioners Ramirez and Hansen are absent. Staff is represented by Monowitz and Fox.
Thank you. Next, we have oral communications. At this time, public may speak on any matter that's not on the agenda. Mercedes, could you please explain the process?
For those attending the meeting on the Zoom video conference, we will use the raise hand feature in order to organize any public comments. During the general public comment period, and for each item on the regular agenda, I will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raise hand feature to raise your hand to speak on that agenda item. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise or lower your hand and *6 to mute or unmute. When you hear your name called, I will prompt you to unmute your microphone and you may begin speaking.
Do we have any hands raised at this time? Or any speaker cards?
I do not show any hands raised, and I do not have any speaker's card in chambers.
So seeing none, I would close the public hearing at this time. Next, we move on to our consent agenda. We have consideration of the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting from April 12th, 2023.
Chair Gupta, I'd like to request that the commissioners postpone action on the minutes. We still need to prepare the draft on them.
Okay. So do I have a motion to postpone the minutes?
Yes.
Second.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Ketchum?
Aye.
Commissioner Serrano-Kwan?
Aye.
Chair Gupta?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
So the minutes are postponed. Next, we move on to the regular agenda. Mercedes, could you please read the item 2 for the record?
Item number 2, the owner is Omid Zahedi and Susan Payrovi. Applicant James Wise. File number PLN 2022-00109.
Presenter, please go ahead.
Good morning, Planning Commission, members of the public and staff. My name is Sonal Agrawal, Planner 3 with the Planning and Building Department, and I will be presenting item number 2, PLN 2022-109, located at 12,400 Skyline Boulevard. So the item before you is a resource management permit to construct a new 7,534 square feet, 3-story single-family residence on a legal 3.1 acre parcel and a grading permit of 1,320 cubic yards of grading, including 940 cubic yard of cut and 380 cubic yard of fill. There's also consideration of the adoption of the initial study and mitigated negative declaration, which was prepared for the project pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. The project also involves conversion of the existing single-family residence, which is 1,099 square feet, into an ADU. The ADU is not subject to the Planning Commission review. So here is the regional context of the site. The site is located in the North Skyline State Scenic Corridor, and it is located on the left side of the Skyline Boulevard. Anything in the Skyline Boulevard, if grading is done more than 25 cubic yard, it requires Planning Commission review. And that is what this project is here before the Planning Commission. The project is surrounded by Midland parcel to the upper left corner and State of California Park on the bottom right, and San Francisco Water Department lands on the right-hand side of the parcel, and there are private properties adjacent to the subject parcel. So the house is actually accessed from a private road called as Mystery Ridge Road, which wraps around the existing house, and it is covered by a lot of trees in the front, as shown on that picture. The existing house has a 3-car attached garage, which will be retained and used as a primary parking for the proposed new house. And this picture basically, this slide basically shows the location of the existing house with respect to the proposed house and some views of the site. The project also qualifies for an architectural exemption as confirmed by the staff through a site visit, as the proposed new house will not be visible from Skyline Boulevard. Here's another slide of the existing and the proposed house, which shows the existing gravel driveway, which will be maintained and also widened up for required fire truck around access. The existing attached 3-car garage will be maintained and will be utilized for the proposed new house. Here's a rendering which shows the context of the proposed house with the current situation. So 2 trees, 2 Monterey pine trees, tree number 34 and 36, were removed under the hazardous tree exemption. And these trees did not require a permit from the planning department, as they were exempt from permit requirements. None of the other trees, significant trees, are being removed for constructing this house. Staff has also worked with the applicant to reduce the grading quantities. There was a second driveway which was being proposed from Misty Ridge Road from the right-hand side of the Misty Ridge Road, but that was eliminated and the existing driveway is being used. The picture over there, which shows a round corner, is actually the playground area, proposed playground area for the house. As mentioned before, the existing driveway, which is shown as the dotted line, will be widened up to 20 feet to meet the required fire truck around radius. And the project was conditionally approved by County Fire. The second driveway, which is shown as an arrow on the right-hand corner, was eliminated. And the circular portion over there is just the play area, which will have a basketball hoop and other play equipment. And the dotted lines here shows the limit of grading. The existing house is served by a septic tank, which is a 2,000-gallon septic tank, good enough for 5 bedrooms. The existing house contains 1 bedroom as confirmed by the building official, and the proposed new house will contain 3 bedrooms, making it a total of 4 bedrooms, which will be still within the limit of the existing septic system. So there will be no need to upgrade the existing septic system. This slide over here shows the water line connection that is going from along the Misty Ridge Road. And the proposed house will tap into this existing water line connection. The site is served by California Water Service Company, Bear Gulch, and the applicant will be required to obtain all necessary permits from the water service company before the issuance of the building permit. This is the floor plan of the basement, which basically shows unfinished basement, a mechanical unit, and a storage room, and an outdoor play area. This is the first floor plan, which shows 2 bedrooms, a common area and kitchen and living space, and an exercise room. The exercise room is not considered as a bedroom since it does not contain a closet. So there are only 2 bedrooms on this floor. On the second floor, there is a common room or kids play area, which is considered as a bedroom because it contains a closet. And here is the floor plan of the ADU with some photographs, current photographs. The upper right hand is the garage, existing 3-car garage, which will be maintained. And then the portion that is highlighted is the room which will be considered as a bedroom as per the building definition and as determined by the building official. The second room over there, since it is connected to the garage, it is not considered as a bedroom. Here are some pictures of the elevations. The existing house uses, the proposed house uses earth tone colors and will have cement plaster. The proposed height is 32 feet 10 and 1/4 inch, which is less than the maximum permitted height of 36 feet. Here are more elevations of the house. And I would just like to highlight the upper hand elevation is the one that will be visible from the Pacific Ocean, and the bottom one is the one that will be that will face towards Skyline Boulevard or Misty Ridge Road. These are the side elevations as seen from Misty Ridge Road and from the existing house. Here is the colors and material board of the house, which shows the use of earth tone colors and glass facades. Here is another rendering, which shows a circular portion that is used as proposed play area. There are some also electrical equipment on the bottom right-hand corner, which will be shielded by a fence. This is the view from Skyline Boulevard, but it will be shielded by the existing trees on the side. Staff has compared the project for regulation conformance with several general plan policies and found the project to be in compliance with soil resource policy, various visual quality policies, water policies, water supply policies, historical and architectural resources, natural hazards policies, fire policies, and vegetative, water, fish, and wildlife resources. And the discussion has been also provided in the staff report for reference. The project was also found to be in compliance with several zoning compliance criteria, such as environmental review criteria, site design criteria, utilities, water resources criteria, cultural resources, hazards to public safety, and primary scenic resources criteria. And it complies with the development standards as shown on the table. There is no maximum floor area for an RM property, and it complies with the setbacks and height and covered parking requirements. The grading of the permit would not have a substantial adverse effect on the environment. The project conforms with the criteria of Chapter 8, Division 7 of the San Mateo County Ordinance Code, including the standards referenced in sections 9296. The project is consistent with the general plan. An initial study and mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project, and the comment period was from March 1st to March 23rd. No comments were received. Mitigation measures have been included as conditions of approval in attachment A. A total of 9 mitigation measures were included in the staff report to mitigate any potential impacts to aesthetics, cultural resources, geology and soil, and tribal cultural resources. Other best practice mitigation measures were included for air quality, biological resource, and climate change. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the mitigated negative declaration and approve the resource management and grading permit for county file number PLN 2022-00109 by making the required findings and adopting the conditions of approval in attachment A of the staff report. And I would also like to highlight that we received a comment late yesterday from Green Foothills regarding the use of the glass and its potential impact to birds. And there are a few ways which can be looked into to reduce any potential impacts, like glazing the glass or providing a screening. And the applicant is here to answer any follow-up questions if you may have for that. That concludes my presentation, and I will be happy to take any further questions.
Thank you, Sona. Good presentation. Commissioners have questions. Commissioner Ketchum?
I would like to wait for the applicant to talk about the bird glass issue.
Okay.
Nothing now.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Serrano?
No question.
I had just one question. I understand that there's a basement also. What does the basement have on this property?
So the basement is basically unfinished, which is used for utilities, for pool equipment, and for storage room. And also, and it has an attached outdoor play area. So it's an open space with basically used for utilities, etc.
Pardon me? For utilities,
yes.
Utility, etc. Okay. Yeah. Did you say pool equipment?
Yes.
So there's a plan for pool?
Yes.
Maybe in the future, but not right.
There is actually a plan. I'm sorry if I haven't mentioned that. There's a pool on the first floor of the house, and the pool equipment is actually located in the basement.
Oh, okay. So pool is on.
Yeah, I can go back to that slide.
Okay. Oh, I must have missed it.
So this open space next to the common living area on the bottom left-hand corner, which shows these two rectangular spaces, is actually pool.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then it is going to be partially covered on the second floor.
Okay.
But still open to sky. And then the pool equipment will be located in the basement.
So this is kind of attached to the house?
Yes, it is attached to the house.
It is attached to the house. Okay, all right. Let me see if I have anything else. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I had something. I would like to know more about the glass too. So thank you, Sona. So if we have the applicant here, would applicant like to speak? You have 15 minutes. Okay. Please state your name and come to the podium.
Hi, everyone. My name is Omi Zahedi. This is my wife, Susan Perovi.
And I'm James Gwise, the architect for the project.
Okay.
Okay, so a little bit about this project. We purchased this property about 3 years ago. We really fell in love with the area due to the views and the nature that it extends to us. This home that exists right now is very small. One of our little ones is somewhere in the back doing some homework, but we have 3 active boys. And so we need more space. And so the idea behind purchasing this property was to complete the original plans of building a second home on here. James was the architect of the original home, and we've hired him to continue that vision forward with us being the new owners. The house itself lends itself to things that we have really looked at carefully over the last 2 years that we've been developing this to come and be here in front of you now. There are some special needs, accessibility needs that are required for our family. We have elderly parents, but we also have my wife has special needs as far as accessibility that will come into play probably more so in the future. So, you know, one of the things that the house has is minimal steps. That's so that we can get around appropriately with elderly parents, as well as any other accessibility issues. Other than that, the house is, you know, one thing I wanted to mention is it says that it's 7,300 square feet, but that is the habitable space is about 4,100 square feet. The rest of it is the basement and other areas of the home that are not habitable space. That's it. I mean, if you have any questions about the project, you know, feel free to ask, and we'll do our best to try to answer them.
I'd just like to add a couple of points. In the design of the house, I mean, this is forever house for these guys. So we took a lot of care in designing the building. Omid brought up special needs, and the house is basically designed with accessibility in mind. So the primary living floor, no steps at the entryways, no steps to any of the major spaces. The house incorporates an elevator so that we can access the second floor if there's an accessibility issue. The other things to keep in mind about this project is we designed with the site in mind, and I have to thank the staff here for keeping us, you know, directed towards that. But our goal was to maintain the character of the site. It's a really special place. And so the building works to work with the site. We've integrated indoor and outdoor spaces. We've kept the building footprint small by going up. So we're preserving a lot of the site for open space and just nature to be as it is. The three children are going to spend their teenage years on the site. So that's the idea, is that this is a forever house. It's integrated with the site. It connects and preserves the character of the site. And another important aspect to keep in mind is we're in the wildland urban interface. So the building is designed with that in mind. There's non-combustible materials. There's very little wood in the building. It's a steel frame structure with concrete and glass. So we've taken those materials, linked them back to the existing house visually, and created a lot of interaction between the indoor and outdoor spaces. So we've made a project that really sits in the landscape in a way that works well for the family and for nature.
Thank you. Commissioner Ketchum, you have a question.
The house looks stunning. The glass, you know, I understand the effect. You love this place, and you bring it all inside through the windows, and but functionally, especially in this area with the birds don't understand glass. They have no comprehension of it. They see a reflection that looks like something they would want to fly to, or they may look right through your house at some, and they come full speed right into the glass. So this is my concern. And have you considered this at all?
Yeah, we have. Those considerations came up after the documents were submitted to the planning department. And so in our conversations, we know this is a fact. And even, you know, if we look around at what fosters those kind of interactions, there's a sort of open space, food in the area. You're on the Pacific Flyway. There's all kinds of things that contribute to that and that can mitigate it. And my studies tell me that treatment of the glass with certain devices that create a more opaque sense of character to the glass is one way to mitigate it. And my own experience in my own little house is that food is a big deal. I had a persimmon tree where birds fed constantly, and I never had bird strikes until last year when we didn't harvest the fruit. So the strategies that we have in mind is limiting the vegetation around the house, which is also part of the fire protection plan. And if it's needed, you know, if we discover that we have a problem, is the implementation of surface treatments, screens, and other things that will give an opaque character to the glass and be a sign that, you know, this is not open sky. This is something to be avoided. So we think there's a bunch of different strategies available that we will employ. Nobody likes to hear that sound, and I've heard it a couple of times at my place. It's really, and I have to go out and pick up a bird, and I have just I have a little studio in an urban backyard. So I think it's not just at this site, it's all over the place.
So do you plan to go ahead with these treatments proactively or wait until you see what the kill rate is?
Well, I mean, that's a nice phrase. The goal is not to have birds die. So we are actively considering it, but we don't know what that is. And part of the concern is that we could spend a lot of money on treatments that aren't required. So we have to be careful and balance a bunch of different aspects here. But we are really concerned about nature, and we are actively looking into it.
Thank you.
Commissioner,
I did have a question on that. We were not able to find anything in the county ordinance relating specifically to bird strikes and window treatments. And we did get communication late last night about concerns around this, and perhaps that's why you're addressing it now. So I'm just curious, is there or is there not something written into the process, as we've gone through and complied with many other requirements for the House bill. This topic has never come up until late last night, actually.
No.
Independent of that, though, we're going to be living there, so we have to address this, and we are going to continue to look for ways to address it. But I don't know where the legalities of that stand.
Chair Gupta, I'd be happy to try and answer that to the chair.
Did you want to say anything before I turn it over to Steve?
Yeah.
Please address it,
just
Steve.
with regard to the fair question about, where the requirement to prevent or avoid bird strikes might come from. It would be based on policies contained in our general plan and local coastal program. We have policies that broadly protect fish, wildlife, birds, particularly sensitive species. Now, most of those policies apply in areas that have been designated as sensitive habitat areas. I don't believe that your site is located within a sensitive habitat area. And however, things like the Pacific Flyway and important migrating routes for birds would be considered relevant, sensitive habitat areas that we'd want to protect. We generally have more specific regulations to implement those policies that are found in the zoning regulations, resource management district, and so forth. At this point, we do not have any specific regulations that call out a requirement for a particular type of glass. So there is no such regulation, but I think it's within the discretion of the Planning Commission to try and accomplish maximum consistency with policies protecting wildlife such as birds.
Okay, thank you.
I'm curious to know, is there a written policy that directly affects this issue or controls this issue?
Well, the commenter on this matter referenced County General Plan, Vegetative Water, Fish, and Wildlife Resources Policy 1.1. I'd also direct, let's see, we're not in the coastal zone here, are we? No, okay.
I searched the planning code last night for just the word bird and nothing popped up. So I think, we want to do the right thing, but we'd like to understand how this is measured too.
I think your concerns would be relevant if the commissioners were suggesting any additional conditions or requirements of your project. I haven't heard that. And I appreciate the statements that you've made and in recognition of your desire to be sensitive to the environment and the wildlife. So it's really up to the commissioners to determine whether or not they believe the conditions of approval that we've recommended are sufficient to achieve consistency with these policies. So I think we should hand it over to the commissioners.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Serrano, did you have any other questions? Commissioner Serrano,
I have no further question, but I do see a comment here on a letter that was submitted to us from Incorporating Bird Safe Design. Has that been addressed already?
Yes, that was the matter of the
sorry.
conversation,
Right,
right?
that's what we were discussing, right, right.
Never mind.
Did you have anything
No additional
further
questions.
to ask about that?
No, I recall the conversation. I'm good now.
Okay, okay. Did you have a chance to look at what Green Foothills pointed out towards like
Yes, we looked at the information and read it through briefly. I can tell you that the mitigation measures that are in their correspondence and the reference sites are very similar to the information that we've looked at previously. There are a variety of ways to accomplish the bird control. So we looked at all those measures last night, and I can tell you that we spent a few hours and maybe a day's worth of time looking at what's possible to mitigate.
Okay.
And then I just want to make it clear that independent of this letter that came through last night, we've spent hours talking about this and thinking about it, and we're it's part of our process. So it is by no means something that we are shrugging our shoulders to or anything like that. We're the ones that are going to have to be occupying this property and living here, and we are going to continue to look for solutions that fit. But we'd like to do it within our own independent studies of the project, and not have it become some external force that is causing us to have to do it in a way that they feel that it should be done. We feel like it's something that is really not written in the process, and but at the same time, it's something that we are going to be we have to fix this because we live inside property, and nobody likes bird strikes, especially the people inside the building.
Right. No, I appreciate your thinking and that you have looked at it and will continue to look into it. So thank you for that. Okay. So we at this time I will open it up for any. Please take a seat, and I'll open it up for any public comments. Mercedes, do we have any hands raised at this time?
We do have one hand raised at this time. I am seeing two hands raised.
Okay, go ahead.
Comments via Zoom will be taken first, followed by the speakers in the chambers. We will start with Lenny Roberts, followed by Carlisle and Young. Lenny, please unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, commissioners. I'm Lenny Roberts, speaking for Green Foothills. I apologize for sending this letter in so late. But as I know you have received my letter, we are concerned about the potential for bird strikes with this particular house. We've been concerned about bird strikes in other locations and have brought this to the commission's attention in the past, particularly along the ocean-facing windows along the shore. But the design of this house is extremely beautiful, and our one concern is that because of the extent of the glass and the location of the glass particularly in opposite walls, I think it was going to be a significant issue as far as bird strikes are concerned. So there are a variety of ways to mitigate hazards to birds. And we're not suggesting that any one specific measure be adopted at this time. But I do think the commission does have the authority to add a condition requesting that or requiring that the applicant incorporate bird safe design in the project. I think having lived in a house with a lot of glass myself, and having had to adjust our windows in response to bird strikes. We have a persimmon tree also. Especially in the wintertime when birds are feeding on berries, you have a lot of potential for whole flocks of birds to actually hit windows. So this house has our house does not have a lot of glass, but it has enough so that it created problems, and we've actually mitigated that. So I do agree that specifics for the site are really important. And I just would like to make sure that a condition is added that doesn't specify what mitigation measures there are for the bird strikes, but that they should be incorporated into the project. So thank you very much. And I appreciate the architect and the applicant's willingness to consider this.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
We will now proceed with Carlisle and Young, followed by Amanda Hughes.
Good morning. My name is Carlisle Ann Young. I live in Moss Beach, and I'm very close to the Pacific Ocean. My house doesn't have too many windows that birds tend to hit, but it is so disheartening when I find a dead bird that's laying, obviously had fallen, broken its neck because it flew into the window. And I can't fault the planning commission for failing to stop a project when it's really the planning department that doesn't have the elements in place to protect birds. So I guess my main suggestion would be that the planning commissioners urge the county to develop a policy and put it into the I'm not sure what's going on with my screen. I don't expect to take 4 minutes, but suddenly my timer just said 4 minutes. Basically, I would like to urge the county to develop a plan so that if this comes up again, which I'm sure it will, these beautiful homes will not be subject to having birds flying into the windows and smashing their little necks. So thank you. And it's a beautiful house. It would be nice to live there, but I hate picking up dead birds on my property when it happens. It's very rare, but it does happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Young.
Our next speaker is Amanda Neese.
Hello, everybody. My name is Amanda Williford Neese. I am actually a neighbor 1 street over from the proposed property. We live at 9 Quail. And I just wanted to comment on the bird thing as well. We do have a window span at our home. We've lived in that home now 2 years. And I can tell you, just as you can pull all the studies and kind of search for the area, we do not have any persimmon trees or any fruit trees on our property. But we have only had 1 bird since we've lived there fly into the glass, which luckily it only stunned the bird. And the bird was able to fly again and fly away. So we've been there for 2 years. We're really close to the property where this is proposed, and we've only had 1 situation. So I would also venture to say we may be kind of over analyzing a little bit about how many birds in this area, but not to negate that risk. But I just kind of wanted to let everybody know what we've seen since we are so close in proximity to the proposed area.
Thank you, Ms. Neese.
We have no more speakers on Zoom.
Okay, any speaker cards?
We have no speakers in chambers.
No. Okay. So seeing no more speakers, we'll close the public hearing at this time.
Chair Gupta,
Okay.
if I may respond to the comments that we've received to date, I appreciate everybody's desire and intention to minimize bird strikes. It's become clear to staff that this is an issue of concern to the commission and others. I think it's an appropriate practice for us to encourage applicants with large windows to reference these guidance measures in terms of how to minimize bird strikes. I think the applicant has received that message and intends to do their part in terms of evaluating those options and implementing what works best for them. And as we move forward with updates to our plans and regulations, and we see opportunities to get more specific about that, we will take it. But at this point in time, it's staff's recommendation that the commission proceed with the approval pursuant to the recommended conditions. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your comments, Director Manovitz. I think that's a very good idea. Okay. So at this time, I would like to open it up to the commissioners for their deliberations, if any. Commissioner Ketchum.
So, yeah, I share this concern, and I brought this up last month in regard to the Palomar Drive residence, which was continued. And I think, you know, we've discussed this here and heard from the applicant, and that's reassuring. I think that, I mean, I don't see how the commission could craft wording for a, you know, we don't have the, you have to go to the bird site where they've got the science and they have the latest suggestions. And obviously we're not equipped to do that on the fly. So I would encourage staff to, if there's some near-term wording or something that you could just add into your permit processing, or maybe certain things to look for, particularly maybe when you can look right through the house in one side and out the other, or things to discourage, or whatever you can do to help with this, because I know the zoning updates take a long time.
Will do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Serrano-Kumar.
No further question.
Would you like to have any comments?
No, I agree with Commissioner Ketchum on that too. So
okay. Yeah, I don't see adding any condition at this time. I think applicant is very willing and is already looking at how they would want their stay in their new home once it's built to be comfortable to them. So I don't see what we can add to it as a condition. I see our council wanting to say something.
Not necessarily wanting to say something. We're thinking about the structure that the future action could take, that what the department could do in the future to build in bird safe building practices and where we would put it. But it doesn't relate to a recommendation about imposing a condition in this instance. I think I agree with the analysis that it would be hard to come up with something on the fly that would be practical to implement and practical to enforce. So it really is kind of a longer term issue for the county to tackle.
Thank you. Right. I kind of agree with that, and that's what Commissioner Ketchum's statement was too. So do I have a motion at this time?
Would you like me to do that?
Please go ahead.
I move that we adopt the initial study mitigated negative declaration and approve the Resource Management District Development Review and Grading Permit PLN 2022-00109 by making the required findings and adopting the conditions of approval and attachment A of the staff report.
The second.
Second.
Roll call, Mercedes.
Commissioner Ketchum.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Serrano Kwan.
Aye.
Thank you. Chair Gupta.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
So the motion passes. Yes, you are free to go. So we move on to item 3 on the agenda. Could you, Mercedes, could you please read that into the records?
Item number 3, San Mateo County Parks Department. The applicant is San Mateo County Parks Department. File number is PLN 2022-00125.
Good morning, commissioners. The project before you today is a request from the San Mateo County Parks Department for a coastal development permit to implement a wildfire fuel reduction program. A component of that program includes the construction of a new fire access road in the south corner of Quarry Park. Additionally, the applicant is requesting approval to construct a bathroom facility in the meadow area of the park adjacent to the recently constructed pump track. Start by familiarizing everybody with where we're at. Quarry Park property is located in the northwest side of El Granada on the rural side of the urban-rural boundary. It's composed of the original rock quarry area as well as the Whitlow addition and the Mirada Sur east and west portions. Parks Department currently conducts limited fuel reduction activities within Quarry Park through the implementation of the county's routine maintenance program, which was approved by the Planning Commission in 2020. Typical fuel management activities covered by the RMP include creating or maintaining 100-foot wide shaded fuel breaks along the park's boundaries and along the park's fire roads and trails. Shaded fuel breaks are created through selective tree thinning and removal of undergrowth within the buffer zone. With this requested CDP, the Parks Department is proposing to expand their fuel reduction activities into areas of the park beyond the currently managed service road corridors. Fuel removal along the park's boundaries closest to the residential neighborhoods are the first priority. In this graphic, in this map here, the area identified as project number 8, which is the purple area highlighted in purple there, Parks proposes to establish a 200-foot wide non-shaded fuel break, similar to that which was created in the early 2000s along the park's boundary with Upper El Granado Boulevard. Within this non-shaded fuel break, all vegetation is removed during initial implementation and is then allowed to naturally regenerate. So this is a ground level view of that area. However, the long-term goal is to maintain no overstory tree canopy in these non-shaded fuel break areas and periodically reduce understory or ground cover vegetation density. Back to the map here. The area identified as project number 16, which is in that kind of light brownish colored area. The goal is to establish a shaded fuel break for those areas to the east of the existing El Granado Boulevard fuel break. As can be seen in these example photos, the creation of shaded fuel breaks involves the removal of smaller understory trees, the limbing up of larger retained trees, the removal of brush and other hanging debris that can serve as a ladder for fire to move into the upper tree canopy, and in some instances, the removal of dead or dying hazard trees. It's another example of before and after treatment areas. So in addition to these two project areas that I just discussed, parks will continue to maintain existing shaded fuel breaks along interior access roads within the park in accordance with the existing routine maintenance program. And those are the areas that are highlighted in green and purple there. Beyond these areas, Parks Department is requesting with this application to implement a long-term fuel reduction program throughout the park, which is shown here in these shaded blue areas. The areas of priority are shown here on slide 12 with the darkest shades of blue as the highest priority. In these areas, the overall canopy will be thinned out in a similar fashion as the shaded fuel breaks. It is not the intent of Parks Department to remove all trees from these areas. Now, given the large size of these areas and their topography, combined with staffing resources, it will take several years for these additional areas to be treated. In light of the longer-term nature of working these additional areas, the Parks Department will develop a specific work plan for each area as they progress through the park. Planning staff would like to amend condition of approval number 9, which is titled Fuel Management Plan, in your staff report to include a requirement that these work area plans be submitted to the Planning Department for review with the conditions of this permit as well as the conditions of the routine maintenance program. And that is discussed in the memo I distributed to the commissioners this morning before the start of the meeting. Now, in addition to the vegetation management aspect of the overall plan, the Parks Department is also proposing to construct a new 2,200-foot long fire road to provide access to the southern corner of Quarry Park. And this would allow CDF fire crews to get to that portion of the park. At the present time, there is no vehicular access down to that area. The road will extend from the end of Coronado Avenue and connect to the existing South Ridge Trail. A gate will be installed at the Coronado Road entrance to control vehicle access. And finally, the third component of this project, of this requested permit, is the construction of a vault toilet adjacent to the new pump track recently constructed near the corporation yard. This toilet will be similar to the existing one that is adjacent to the parking lot and will not utilize water and will be housed in the permanent structure, as you can see here. As discussed in your staff report, there are sensitive habitat areas within Quarry Park property, as well as the potential for several special status plant and animal species to occur within the park. These include California red-legged frog and San Francisco garter snake. Potential impacts to these species were previously analyzed at the time the routine maintenance program was developed and mitigation measures were placed on that permit. Those mitigation measures continue to be in effect and apply to this request for additional vegetation management activities within the park. However, in preparing the CEQA document for this permit, the county's consultant identified additional plant and animal species that require protection. Specifically, the potential for impacts to California strawberry were identified and appropriate mitigation measures were developed by the consultant to ensure compliance with policy 7.49 of the county's LCP. Additional measures proposed by the consultant to reduce impacts to burrowing owls, special status bumblebees, and roosting bats have been included as conditions of approval in your staff report. And with their inclusion, staff believes the project complies with the policies of Chapter 7 of the LCP. The other major policy discussion in your staff report relates to the project's consistency with the visual resources chapter of the LCP, specifically policies 8.5 and 8.9. The goal of this project is not to remove all trees and vegetation from the treatment areas, but to thin out the eucalyptus grove within the treatment areas in order to reduce risks of fire. Most of the trees that will be removed as part of this management program will be eucalyptus trees, which are noted for their high combustibility and the inordinate amount of debris that they drop and accumulates throughout the grove. The majority of the trees to be removed are less than 17 inches in diameter and generally sit below the canopy of larger trees within the grove. These smaller trees provide a ladder for fire to reach up into the upper forest canopy where flaming debris can be pushed by the wind into adjacent residential areas. The Parks Department has already actively employed fuel reduction strategies within some of the border areas along the periphery of the park. This CDP would allow them to continue such activities deeper into the park in order to reduce the potential for a catastrophic fire, such as the Oakland Hills fire of 1991 and the more recent CZU lightning complex fires of 2020. Because most of the trees that will be removed as part of this program will be smaller understory saplings, their removal will not be readily visible from a distance. Many larger mature trees, which comprise the majority of the viewscape, will remain and continue to define the forested nature of the hillside. Staff believes that the proposed project will allow for the reduction of fire risk while avoiding significant impacts to public views. And in closing, staff is recommending approval of this project subject to the required findings and conditions of approval identified in attachment A of your report, including proposed additional language for conditions of approval number 9. And with that, I concluded my presentation. Are there any questions I can answer for the commissioners at this time?
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
I'm sorry to jump in, Chair Gupta. Mike, did you mention the addendum to the staff report?
I did, yes.
Okay.
The modification.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ketchum? No question. Commissioner Sarandokwan?
No question.
Look, this looks like a very ambitious undertaking.
Yeah. Well, I think, when the county acquired this property, these were the conditions that existed on the site. And I think we have a problem, or not a problem, but we have a situation in California where we do have a lot of these urban wildland interfaces where we do have a lot of very flammable vegetation, as we've seen in the last few years. There's a high fire risk out there. Definitely a problem that needs to be addressed.
Right. Especially after the fires we had not too long ago.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have it looks very good to me. I just am trying to kind of wrap my arms around it.
Just in case there are Assistant Parks Director Hannah Ostrom is here to answer any questions, provide additional details.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So I'm looking at it that there was some level of maintenance that the department was already doing.
That's correct. Yes. So under the routine maintenance program that was approved by the county and subsequently approved by the Coastal Commission, does provide both the Parks Department to do some vegetation management along existing interior fire roads and trails within the park and along the borders of the park. It also provides our own Public Works Department to do some vegetation management along certain roads in accordance with that program. But the park is a rather large area, and so as you can see from that, the one graphic I had, there are additional areas that the fire, if not addressed, would become too large and could overwhelm the existing breaks that are maintained.
Right. So is this additional maintenance commitment only for another few years, or how does that work?
So my understanding from Parks is obviously it is a large area. They have limits on the amount of staffing and budget that they can devote to this in any given year. So they will be working on different areas of the park over time. And then once, well, in addition to working on new areas, they will of course be maintaining the areas that they've already previously gone in and thinned out. So this really is not a, it will continue to be an ongoing process for as long as part of the county owns the park.
Okay. So I was reading in the report, like there are activities that are mentioned that something will take 1 to 3 weeks. Like for example, fuel treatment activities in small treatment areas could be completed 1 to 3 weeks, while in larger areas may take 6 to 12 weeks. So would those areas be closed during that time while the fuel treatment is being done?
Yes, it is my understanding that the parks would keep people out of there for safety reasons. Obviously, they don't want to have the public walking through an area when there might be trees being felled or equipment being moved around.
And it could be trees being pulled down, or even some chemicals being used.
Yes.
To,
yeah.
Okay. So this could would be an ongoing thing. It's not that it would be done and.
That's correct. Yes. So obviously the initial phases will be most visible, but there will be essentially an ongoing maintenance for forever, really, I guess, as long as the county owns the park.
Okay. All right. So that is for the fuel reduction part of it. And then this Fire Road construction, the Southridge Fire Road construction, that is one project that would be done and it would be finished.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And there was a correspondence or some suggestion that came from Mid-Coast Community Council.
And I believe Hannah could probably speak directly to those. I think there were suggestions about the details of the construction, which probably Hannah would be best
okay.
to respond
okay.
to.
Okay. We'll come to that. Okay. And the next thing was the vault toilet installation. So that one, is that something that is already assembled or manufactured?
Yeah, they're pre-manufactured and used.
Just installed there. Yeah, that was a good idea. That's a good thing to have
The
there.
users or contractor would appreciate it.
Right, right. Okay. Okay, so that is all I have at this time.
I do believe, well,
yeah.
Hannah has
Okay. Yeah.
While Hannah's getting her presentation together, just on the topic of correspondence, as you noted, we got comments from Midcoast Community Council. We also got 2 emails that came in late last night. I don't know if the commission had an opportunity to see it. One was from Brigitta Bauer, who is in favor of removing use along the fire roads. And then one from Dorothy Williams, who is concerned about the extent, the width of the removal along the roads and recommends 25 feet rather than 100 feet, just so the commissioners are aware.
Okay.
Over to you, Hannah.
Okay.
Thank you, commissioners. So I don't need to go into all of the same detail that that Mike was able to provide, but I do want to share a little bit more on the fuel reduction projects, just to clarify our intent and the rationale for how we proposed this. You know, this map does show a fairly extensive area covered throughout the park where we would like to have the potential to expand our fuel reduction efforts. And this was developed based off of a, that you may be familiar with, but a wildfire resiliency scoping project that the San Mateo Resource Conservation District conducted last year. And these, the findings of this helped identify additional treatment areas within Quarry Park that would have high, what they call high treatment effectiveness, which is a term we use throughout the project description. And this, you know, was modeled to show that if work is performed in these areas, there is a greater benefit to the community surrounding to reduce wildfire risk. And so this map helps illustrate the findings of that to show you know, how we want to be able to plan future projects within these portions of the park to be able to achieve that type of wildfire resiliency benefit. However, we don't see this as like a blank slate to be able to, you know, just go in and start treating all of this area. We do still treat fuel reduction projects as discrete projects, which is why, if I'm just going to skip a few slides ahead, feel this measure regarding the project specific fuel management plan is really key. So for each like future project area that is not fully defined yet, there's a mitigation measure outlined that would you know, require the department to prepare and identify the project specifics in this fuel management plan. And it would also, you know, confirm the consistency with the CEQA document and the coastal development permit, and describe all of the appropriate mitigation measures from both documents that would be relevant for this work. And it would be consistent with the scale of work that we're talking about in the CEQA document as well, in terms of the range of acreages we may plan to treat on an annual basis, or the duration of time that we anticipate projects to take. So there would still be a process of further refining that larger map area into discrete project areas. Most of these would focus on shaded fuel break areas, but we do, as Mike mentioned, have this bluish purple area planned as a non-shaded fuel break. And then again, this map does represent the known project areas that we've previously identified as a priority through our wildfire fuel management program, and that we have not had the ability to implement yet because of you know, where they're located in the park, and then having treatment activities or treatment methods that are not consistent with the routine maintenance program in terms of the level of fuel reduction work proposed in these areas. And so these are included as specific projects that we have planned, but then through subsequent years and as funding is available, this measure would allow us to further define additional projects in the future and submit that to, as Mike mentioned, as suggested in the amendment to that condition, submit that to the planning department just to confirm consistency. And then these images were shared, but these are just examples to show what these types of work areas look like. The bottom showing after treatment on the very bottom right-hand side, and then the lower left photo is the top of the non-shaded fuel break area along El Granada Boulevard. And just within these areas as well, and consistent with the mitigation measures that we identify, we would be able to design the projects in a way that we can avoid ESHAs, we can avoid sensitive resources, and we would have the appropriate biological monitoring occur prior to projects and throughout the implementation of projects to both make sure that the work is designed in a way that these can be avoided, and that through the course of work, anything that is discovered can be effectively avoided. And that's been our standard practice for the work that we have done throughout the park to date as well. Regarding the Southridge Fire Road project, this map shows in red the location of this portion of the Southridge Fire Road, and the sort of green or teal highlighted areas align with other fire roads within the park. And so this extension of the Southridge Fire Road down to Coronado Avenue creates a new point of access and additional connectivity to the existing network of fire roads in the park. Right now, there is an existing pedestrian and bicycle trail that follows a similar alignment, but is not vehicle width or accessible and not an appropriate grade for vehicles. So this fire road extension would essentially replace the trail at an adjusted alignment and the proper grade and width to allow for the vehicle access. And this has been something that has been planned and coordinated with the CAL FIRE and other fire departments in the county to, essentially alongside these fire departments, identify the need for this and the benefit that it would provide for emergency access. The design has been intentional to align with CAL FIRE standards for fire roads in terms of the grade, the width, the spacing and location of turnouts, and essentially just the needs that they have for fire road access within parkland settings. This is another image of the overall plan or design for the fire road. So it'll be a 12-foot width along the majority of the length, but where turnouts are present, the width could be between 20 to 30 feet. And there are 5 turnouts included in the design, as well as one larger turnaround area. And the total length is 2,240 feet. And the grade ranges between 5 to 16%. There'll also be a 14-foot gate added to the end of the trail where the road meets Coronado. And the surface of the road would be a rocked aggregate with a depth of at least 6 inches And this would generally meet the Caltrans 1.5 inch class 2 aggregate base gradation specifications, and have specifications for particle size and fine contents as well. And I know one of the comments that we received from the Mid-Coast Community Council was regarding the rocking of the service roads, and a request if there is a potential to include an earth-toned rocking material, or otherwise have like a soil amendment added to the road surfacing to create a more natural coloring. And so this is something that we'll need to include with the contractor, essentially bid specifications, which will come at a later time. And our bill, we would anticipate needing to require this or include this as an optional bid item, because it would be dependent on overall cost and availability of a material that sort of meets that specification of an earth-toned base rock, and our overall project budget to be able to select that material over sort of a more standard base rock. I'm not familiar with the sort of cost differences that are associated with that. And so that'd be something we'd be looking to our contractors for the project to be able to spec out and provide a cost comparison for. And so we'll be discussing with our Department of Public Works to include that as an optional line item, and be able to have that cost comparison for the difference. For the road as well, we have had concern from the community about the extent of vegetation removal and tree removal. So there is 167 eucalyptus and 79 Monterey pine that need to be removed within the footprint of the road. And these are contained within, it may be a little difficult to see on the screen, but there's a green outline around the footprint of the road. And the tree removals are limited to the areas within or directly adjacent to that green line, where they are likely to be either overlapping with the road or have enough root impact that it would be compromised by the road construction. And so just to clarify that, the intent is there will still be existing vegetation right up to the road edge. It wouldn't be a vast clearance. And the we would still expect a natural appearance and a natural feel to the road appearance after construction, because vegetation removed isn't in excess of what's necessary for the road construction. And I know there was another comment about recycling or reuse of logs or vegetation for the purpose of retaining walls or benches. So that's not currently something that's included in the specifications for this. We wouldn't want to interfere with the way that the road drainage has been designed and engineered. However, there are logs that would be left on the hillside from the tree removal process. They just wouldn't be directly adjacent to the road. And we would be selectively leaving logs on the hillside to help with habitat features, but also slowing surface runoff on the hillside. So this would be just a portion of our process when we conduct those necessary tree removals for the project. So that is something that would still remain on site in terms of vegetation. And I know that there's been concern from the community about surface drainage and runoff from Quarry Park. And it's important to differentiate that a lot of the roads, well, the majority of the roads that are existing throughout the park are all inherited from the time when prior to the Parks Department took over ownership and management of the park. And we can't confirm or speak to the design that went into building these roads, but this segment of road that we're constructing has been properly engineered and designed to meet Caltrans standards or Caltrans specifications, engineering specifications, and also these CAL FIRE standards, and has appropriate drainage features incorporated into the design, including rolling dips and a proper grade and compaction level that should minimize concerns about erosion. And like the rolling dips and the outsloping of the road should properly sheet flow water off to the side or down on adjacent hill slopes, rather than having focused or channelized runoff coming directly down the hillside. So I just did want to clarify that, because it's a concern that we've heard from the community as well. And then lastly, just the image of the restroom, the location where it is planned to go adjacent to the pump track. And then that is a photo of the existing restroom at Quarry Park, and what is planned to go in place beside the pump track would look very similar to this. So just an illustration of what we're planning to install for that. And I'm happy to answer any more questions and provide any more information.
Thank you, Hannah. Question?
Hi. So we've talked about this before. I just wanted to talk about this is about the trail surface, the desire for a natural look and feel, since this will also be used as a trail. The Mid-Coast Council and for a long time have advocated for this type of trail surface, ideally packed dirt, understand, but then when we got to Pillar Point, when the access road there was extended, obviously this was going to be for all weather vehicles. And the request was, could you put in your specifications to blend into the last 3-inch lift of crushed rock, native soil, to soften the color and texture of this trail tread? Well, obviously when the access road was constructed in 2018, clearly an effort had been made to mix the native soil in and do this, but the implementation was very uneven. And after that, the hope was that parks would work to refine the effort going forward, such as at Quarry Park, to refine the techniques and hopefully come up with a road that will serve fire and emergency access and also provide a more natural appearance and feel to the trail users. So any effort that you can make in that direction would be tremendously appreciated. And I've even thought of, you think sometimes if it's in the pine woods, it'll be covered with pine needles, but you don't want to be pine needles there. And even if you maybe occasionally spread out some chips or leaves over the surface, anything you can do, that is a concern. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's all I have to.
Commissioner Serrano-Kwan?
I have no questions.
No questions. Okay. Just to kind of tag on to the question that Commissioner Ketchum was asking, somebody had there's a suggestion about putting these wood chips on the either on this fire road or somewhere. Could they themselves be a cause of combustion or fire hazard, fire risk?
So typically we have much less concern about wood chips as a fire risk. It is still, biomass that could burn, but because of the way it's low to the ground and broken into these smaller pieces, they typically have like a different burn rate. Like they would burn differently than like a log or a tree, and the rate of spread of fire on like a wood chip surface would be a lot less concerning or
Less
slower
concerning.
burning than these other like taller, larger combustible fuels. So while it is still, you know, potentially biomass that's present, it just behaves a lot differently if there was a fire. So we're a lot less concerned about that as a fire risk. And it's been a practice for a lot of our projects to chip and spread as much material as we can within the project areas, because it does also help with weed suppression, and it does help with surface soil erosion or water infiltration as well. So it has a benefit from that point of view as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just curious about that. Okay. So regarding this fire road, was there already some kind of dirt road along that area where this was designed, or was there some other criteria that was used?
It was like a 4 to 5 foot width recreational trail, and it was actually sort of an informally created trail that's been more established over time. That follows a similar alignment, but it's connects from the end of Coronado and allows, you know, just hikers or bikers to connect between the end of the South Ridge Trail where it terminates currently, or the fire road, and it converts to this sort of foot width trail. So there would still be through this road the ability for recreationalists to use this for hiking, for access. It would just replace the footpath that is existing.
Okay. And it's not going to be used by any of the any recreational vehicles?
No,
they will not be.
Vehicles and vehicles.
Okay, that's why there's a gate there to prevent that from happening. Okay. You already addressed the Mid-Coast Community Council's suggestions. Okay. So no, I don't have any other questions. Thank you very much, Anna. So, Steve, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I don't. Thanks to Hannah for addressing the comments, and I think we're ready for the public hearing.
Public hearing, okay. So Mercedes, do we have, would you explain the process for public hearing?
I think we're good to go based on the instructions in the beginning. I think you can just, we'll recognize any members of the public who would like to speak regarding item number 3. Now would be the opportunity to raise your hand. Any hands raised?
Right ahead. Great. We do have 2 hands raised at this time. As a reminder, each speaker has 5 minutes to speak. We will start with Dorothy, followed by Dan Haggerty. Dorothy, please unmute your microphone and begin speaking when you see the timer. There it is. Dorothy, please begin speaking.
I do it again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I live on Avenue Cabrillo in Columbus, and they've already removed 200 feet of eucalyptus trees in front of my house. If they remove another 200 feet up the hill, it is just going to look horrible, and there's no reason for it. The circle of trees is already denuded. Kids are now digging holes in it and using their motorbikes on it. And the weeds are growing horribly, even though there's 3 feet of chips there. I would like to see the shaded fuel breaks be, instead of 100 feet on each side of the roads, to be a lot smaller, because otherwise what you're looking at is 2/3 of a football field. You'll be walking empty 2/3 of a football field. So that's like your 50-yard line. You're looking all the way to the 20-yard line on each side. That's way too big of a break. I also, let's see, what is it? And one of your slides said they're going to remove only the large trees. The other one said they're going to remove the small trees. I'd like that to be clarified at some point. And the report that I've read does not say anything about shaded fuel breaks. It just says tree removals. And this is, if they go 200 feet up the slope here and remove all the trees, which is what they're proposing with that dark purple band, that will cause floods in the event, or a mudslide in the event there are rains like we had this year. I would like to see the dead trees removed and the shaded fuel break coming up from Columbus, right by Avenue Cabrillo. I don't see any reason to remove an additional 200 feet. That is just way too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dan Haggerty. We do have 2 more speakers, followed by Fran Pollard. Dan, please unmute your microphone and begin speaking when you see the timer.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, Dan Haggerty, 35-year resident of El Granada. I am on the Mid-Coast Community Council. I have further personal comments just for myself on the road. Clearly, I support the road. I think it's important. I do have great concerns with the scarring effect of the project, and noting that this road will be visible from Highway 1 and, of course, from the homes on Coronado Avenue. You know, there's been suggested about earth tone base rock road material. I understand it'll probably be coming up a cost issue, but you know, this is very important because you know, a lot of the trees that'll be left are late in their age. There's going to be very little, I think, over the years, there'll be very little vegetation covering this road. You know, and you know, there are different ways to accommodate the effect of giving an earth tone surface. You know, a little bit of native soil. Also, another option would be to top it off with colored decomposed granite, whatever works best. You know, for the contractor and you know, the parks, of course. I also you know, would like to see a vegetation island in the very large 96-foot diameter cul-de-sac, something to break up the vastness of no vegetation. This is going to be a pretty good scar visible from many places. And of course, there's a lot of appropriate native vegetation there that will probably get destroyed. I think that it would be a good idea to try to save some of that. Of course, leaning on you know, contractors like Go Native or whatever that you know how to do this. But essentially, you know, dig it up, keep a large root ball, wrap it with burlap, leave it on the side of the road, keep it moist, and when the whole thing's said and done, decide you know, best appropriate places to plant these. And I wanted to move on that I do not support. Hello? Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, we can.
Do not support the bathroom near the pump track. this meadow used to be beautiful, and it's being destroyed. There's already a giant radius of gravel in front of the service yard. This what used to be just a beautiful meadow is continually getting destroyed. I do support the pump track, but I'd like to see things kept more open and natural. And now, as far as back to the road, as far as the gate, you know, I've got some concerns. The gate that has been put at the Highway 1 entrance to East Murata Surf, that has cyclone fence all the way up to the trail. It's really unnecessary. Cyclists can run right into it. And I'm hoping that nothing of this sort would be considered at the gate of the Fire Road proposal. You know, the key thing is, you know, low impact, blending in with the environment, and let's just do everything possible to make this project beautiful and not look like it shouldn't be in a park setting. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty.
Our next speaker is Fran Pollard, followed by Carlisle and Young. Fran, please unmute your microphone and begin speaking when you see the timer.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I apologize if it sounds tinny. I don't know why my microphone is suddenly tinny. But anyway, yes, I'm Fran Pollard, El Granada, across the street from Quarry Park. And by the way, my neighbors have given me permission to speak for them. They agree with what I have to say. So I am speaking for all of us on Columbus. I don't know if you, Columbus, especially the lower part of Columbus to Cabrillo Avenue and from the entrance to Quarry Park. I guess you refer to that as the southern part. I'd like clarification of that, if this is the southern, and where all that blue or purple border was lined on the map. I wish you, if you gave a timeline, I'm sorry I missed that, but I hope you will move that up. I've asked for years now to cut those big, giant, over 100-foot tall trees that border. There's really not a whole lot of them. There's the one on the entrance corner, which is multiple trees together, which I realize would be a big task to take those all out. On the other hand, if they ever all fell, it's on Columbus is a very narrow road. I doubt it's even 40 feet wide. And the house is close to that. And those trees are more than 100 feet tall, and they're uphill. All the trees along the border there are uphill from our homes, and everyone is frightened now of them falling. I mean, we have a double whammy now, not only fear of fire, but now we're fear of these tremendous storms that sometimes with the wind of 80 miles an hour out here they've been, and that those trees are sooner or later going to fall. If they don't burn, they're going to fall. So they have to be removed, and I wish you'd move the timeline up to get these trees out. I've been asking for that for years now, to get the trees that border Columbus along the park out before anything else. That's more important than all the trees inside the park. If it's all going to take time, please get rid of those before they destroy our homes And maybe I was thinking maybe you should go with PG&E and get them to help with some of the costs, because their power lines all are right under all these trees, which face our homes and our driveway. So even if, say, one fell or something, the lines come down, that could cause a fire, and we wouldn't even be able to get out of our driveways because the lines are down and you're not supposed to cross over the lines. So it's very dangerous. And I wish something would be done on that. I wish you'd move the timeline up so that that border is completed before everything else. People that are walking, running, biking in the park can get out of the way, but we can't move our homes. And a lot of these horrible things happen during the middle of the night or weekends, and there's no way, people are asleep in bed, children around here. It would be horrible. So I'm asking you to please move up the timeline and get rid of these trees before you do all the other fuel reduction, and create a good buffer zone. Like Dorothy said, it doesn't have to be 200 feet, but we do need to get rid of the trees that are uphill from our homes and could fall on our homes. In fact, that multiple tree on the corner at the entrance, it could be just cut down to size. I don't even care. It doesn't have to be taken out. Cut it down. I think when I moved here 50 years ago, it was half the size. Cut it back down, and I wouldn't worry about it falling anymore. It wouldn't reach the house anyway. And that would be a lot simpler than trying to take all that out. Yeah, so I think I covered it. I would like to know what the timeline is, though, for removal. And if you can move it up, please do. So I think I said most of what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Potter.
Our last speaker is Carlisle Ann Young. Carlisle, please unmute your microphone and begin speaking when you see the timer.
Thank you. Oh, when I see the timer, I unmuted, but I don't see the timer yet. Do I have to wait?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, that fouled me up before because I was talking already. Thank you. Has the Parks Department done an inventory of the amount of Quarry Park trees that blew down in the January, February storms? That's one question none of the commissioners asked. I am in favor of removal of the fuel load within the park, especially the tall trees on the perimeter that threaten property owners' homes. And I agree that needs to be prioritized. What are the plans to haul away the wood debris? I'm concerned that you mentioned leaving the felled trees on site. There's no need for a second vault toilet near the pump track. It looks like it'll be for the convenience for park rangers at the nearby corporation yard. But as for the kids using the pump track, they could just ride their bikes to the entrance toilet not far away. There was no community poll before the decision was made, and you could spend that extra money on using the proper color gravel on the new fire road at the South Ridge. I have big concerns about stormwater runoff from the South Ridge Fire Road that could run into the East Miramar neighborhood via Coronado, just as the Santa Maria watershed in Quarry Park empties unabated into the existing neighborhood via the park entrance at 1195 Columbus, negatively impacting neighbors, which caused the need every winter for sandbags 3 blocks along the residential area. I know the DPW rechanneled some of the January stormwater runoff, which now runs into the Murata Surf East, and that water continued downhill to flood the new $4 million multimodal trail at Highway 1. So it was a big concern of mine that the big erosion issues within the park and the stormwater runoff, which was not addressed in the master plan update, which despite much community input was brushed aside, and they raced it through to get it to be voted on while Don Horsley was on his last day at the commission on the Board of Supervisors. So that stormwater issue should be addressed sooner than later. The Parks Department is putting off dealing with the stormwater project, and the mid-coast gets brushed off every time. You mentioned that the elevation was between 5 and 16 degrees on the existing fire road. I know that you probably have to regrade because I don't think a CAL FIRE truck can get up there with the existing ruts. But I think to brush off Dan Haggerty's suggestion of the darker stone ground covering for the new trail, or as you call it, the shaded fuel break fire road, it's just not right. So I would like to see Quarry Park become a really nice park for community members and not just I guess I would call it a budgetary suck for fuel load reduction, but I don't get it. Last year, on the 5-year CIP published on the county website, they only had $213,000 for the pump track, and then they gave Flood Park in Menlo Park $26 million for a 5-year CIP to get completely remodeled. And they already have nice picnic grounds, a really decent play area for kids. Ours is just like wood chips and some plastic structures. So it's kind of sad that they put all this money into fuel breaks and want to add a second vault toilet when there's no need for one. Is already one nearby, and yet they don't make any other nice features for the community. So I'm not even going to use my whole 5 minutes, but if this creates any concern for some of the commissioners, especially the lack of stormwater management, and the newly created runoff that's going to happen when they start grading that fire road on the South Ridge. Hopefully you'll ask some more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carlyle.
I have no more comments via Zoom.
Any speaker cards?
I have no speaker for chamber.
Okay. So in that case, we'll close the public hearing. Would you like to comment?
Thank you, Chair Gupta. We certainly heard a lot of comments from the public, and many of those comments and questions really have to do with parks programs and budgeting. And I'll leave it to the commission to ask any follow-up questions of parks that you'd like. I think with regard to the matters that are relevant to the commission's deliberations, they really have to do with potential impacts on views. And I think it's really important for the commission to keep in mind that this is an essential public safety project. And so I think that's got higher priority than concerns about the views. I think you've heard a commitment from parks to do what they can to minimize impacts within the project scope. I think their proposal to pursue the more brownish type of golden gravel as opposed to the gray gravel through the bid process is about as most as we can ask of them at this point. I don't imagine that they'll be using cyclone fencing for the gate, and I see a negative confirmation that they will not be. And then finally, I think the only other potential visual impact is from the bathroom. And in staff's opinion, it just makes sense to have a restroom close to the pump track facility. I'm sure that there are users there and observers that don't have bikes that will need to use the facilities, and I believe it's an appropriate location for such a facility. So be happy to address any other questions or concerns that commissioners may have.
Are you aware of these trees referred by Fran Pollard?
Yes, I am. And as the commission may be aware, we do consider eucalyptus trees that are within 100 feet of a structure to be hazardous. And for that reason, we've issued essentially a blanket exemption from the tree removal permit requirements. I can't speak to whether or not this project will address those particular trees along Columbus that were brought up during the public comment. But I can say that adjacent property owners who would like to remove them can do so with permission from the Parks Department. So if there are concerns by the adjacent private property owners, they would need to get approval from the property owner, the Parks Department, but they would be exempt from permitting requirements if they desire to remove that tree.
Okay, so it's not that it's county's responsibility in any way.
Yes, I mean, it would be impossible for the county to take responsibility of all the hazardous trees that are within the unincorporated areas. It's private properties owners' interest and responsibility to look out for their private property.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Okay. So do we have any more questions for, so I'll open it up for Commissioners' deliberations. Commissioner Ketchum.
As I said, I appreciate the efforts that County Parks is going to do for the trail surface. And other than that, I'm ready to approve.
Commissioner Serrano-Kwan.
Ready to approve as well.
Great. I think a lot of effort has gone in, and I want to thank the staff and the county for putting in all this effort and preparing their report to bring it to us. I think it's a great project, and we need to do it considering all the fires and the storms and what else is in store for us. I don't know, but thank you. Thank you for doing that. I'm ready to support. So do I have a motion?
Would you like me to do that?
Go right ahead.
I move to approve the coastal development permit, county file number PLN 2022-00125 by making the required findings and adopting the conditions of approval in attachment A of the staff report with addition of supplemental condition of approval number 9. Does that cover it? Okay.
Second.
I second.
Motion, please. Oh, sorry. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Ketchum.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Serrano-Kwan.
Aye.
Thank you. Chair Gupta.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Congratulations. Thank you. We'll take a 10-minute break.
So for those watching on Zoom, it's currently 11 o'clock. The commission will be taking a break and reconvening at 11:05. Thank you.
That's fine. So we are back. We move on to agenda item 4. Mercedes, please read that into the record.
Item number 4, San Mateo County Planning and Building Department. File number is NA, and the location is in unincorporated Mud Coast.
You could start the presentation. Okay, so I'd like to spark a discussion of mid-coast shoreline erosion and armoring, and to consider the results of shoreline development approvals over the years. Next. The California Coastal Act, among other things, seeks to protect natural resources and minimize risk from coastal hazards. It became effective on February 1st, 1977. I won't read all the text here, but the presentation is posted with the meeting materials for your reference. You should also be aware of the public trust doctrine, that in California, the state owns the beach seaward of the mean high tide line, which moves inland as sea level rises. But just keep in mind this phrase here: protect natural shorelines and minimize risk from coastal hazards, as we go through the slides. Next. The impacts of shoreline armoring are visual impacts, which are much greater to the general public on the beach than to the private property owner above. Loss of public beach area, such as by placing riprap on the beach. Reduction of beach access, lateral or vertical. Lateral is along the shore, vertical is to and from the beach. Loss of sand supply from the natural process of eroding cliffs. Passive erosion, which is long-term natural shoreline migration landward with loss of beach in front of the armoring. And active erosion, localized accelerated erosion due to wave action with armoring structures, including scour at the base or on adjacent shoreline segments, and changes in overall beach morphology. Next. Montero State Beach. You have the entire viewshed is preserved natural land, and there is the riprap in the middle. So the lower right slide shows the natural cliff face at Montero State Beach with the mountain behind. And on the left, you have the alien boulders. I say alien not because they're from Mars, but because they don't come from here. They've been trucked in from somewhere else. And the concrete slurry contrasts harshly with the surrounding natural landscape and scar the view. Next. 1983 El Nino storms. Only 4 years after construction, emergency armoring installed on the public beach to protect the Chart House restaurant. Next. Early permitting was at the Coastal Commission for the restaurant and at the county for the riprap. The upper image shows 1979, the newly constructed Chart House restaurant built on the footprint of the former 50s motel restaurant. It's right at the edge of the bluff. The county approved the riprap after the fact in 1984 for 460 linear feet of ocean bluff, and reconstruct and install storm drainage in the parking lots at 8150 Cabrillo Highway. Next. So maintenance and useful life. Here's a steep wall of boulders, 40 years old, undermined and hazardous. This lower right picture, I took a tape measure over there. That cave underneath that rocks held up by the concrete slurry, it was 7 feet deep, and that was some years ago. There was a 2010 report by BAG engineers, said riprap was not keyed into the firm ground underlying the sand. The bottom 6 feet of the riprap has been grouted with cement without permit. Parking lot drains discharge behind the riprap, causing the undermining. And the report recommends rerouting the drainage pipes and repairing the riprap seawall. To date, this has not occurred. Next. The red line at the property boundary indicates all the riprap is on state parks land. In 2017, county use permit amendment to legalize unpermitted development includes a condition of approval to repair the riprap, to coordinate the plan with state parks and Coastal Commission, and submit the plan within 1 year. Plan for the county mandated riprap repairs was due October 2018. Next. Riprap repairs should include removal of U-blocking boulders on the bluff top. This comes from the Mid-Coast Council in 2017. The riprap extends onto the top of the bluff, far beyond where needed for erosion protection, blocking public access and views. Planned cross sections of the riprap are conceptual, showing an even gentle slope, but in reality, the slope is much steeper along the bottom and more level along the top. The red line marks the upper reach of the riprap in front of the restaurant, which has no view obstruction. Next. The view of the beach from the parking lot is blocked by boulders. The excess boulders strewn over the bluff top block access and mar the mountain view. This is if you're standing at the top of the stairs to go down to the beach, you look back to the mountains, but there's all these rocks. Okay, next. Now moving on to Moss Beach, we're going north to south here. So pre-coastal act armoring itself is grandfathered without a coastal development permit, but modification or repair requires a CDP. This is Reef Point Road, pre-coastal act development and pre-coastal act armoring is grandfathered, but extensive repairs have been necessary over the years under county permits. This collection of different types of armoring here is sort of represents the reaction to natural process of coastal bluff erosion has been piecemeal emergency armoring to protect development, mostly without regard to aesthetics, coastal access, or long-term area shoreline dynamics. Next. Just to the south, now this is Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, Dean Creek to San Vicente Creek. Prior to 1983, public beach access existed both north and south of the FMR access ramp. FMR, that's Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. And these pre-coastal act houses on the bluff top there, the county's 1980s armoring permit approvals noted the wide beach and that lateral access would not be blocked by riprap placed on the public beach to protect 3 homes. The lower picture shows how that looks. And also I point out here, the you may be familiar with the one on the left, 199 Arbor Lane, where we approved condition of approval, no future armoring for development there, hasn't been built yet. And then there was also that no future armoring at the other arrow. So you have a mix here of allowed armoring and where the coastline is. Okay, next. So here's an example of managed retreat. Is when it was threatened by bluff erosion in 2002, instead of arming the cliff, the historic house at 100 Beach Street was moved inland onto the neighboring parcel. In 2012, on appeal of a CDP for an expansion of the relocated house, the Coastal Commission prohibited future armoring. Next slide. Peninsulas of rock expand across the beach at the Marine Reserve as riprap deteriorates and surrounding cliffs erode inland naturally, nourishing the beach. Next. The thing is in the way, I can't read the slide. Local geologists submitted this to the county in 2013 of his analysis of the deteriorating riprap and the hazards this causes. Falling rocks on the beach. And anyway, next slide. Even at low tide, public access along the shoreline is difficult and hazardous due to the deteriorating riprap with precariously perched boulders overhead and strewn over the beach. The new sign was added in response to the geologist's 2013 report of rockfall hazard. Next. Next slide. So the Moss Beach Reef Overlook is a promontory constructed of rock and concrete rubble on the shoreline at San Vicente Creek before the Marine Reserve was established in 1969. The 2016 FMR Master Plan Assessment calls for managed retreat as the overlook degrades. Repairs continue to be made. The question is, when will planning begin? Next slide. So just to wrap up this section here, the 2022 shoreline from Dean Creek to San Vicente Creek, you can see the cliff erosion is cutting in behind the riprap extensively there on the left. The red arrows at 97 Beach and 201 Nevada show where those houses on large lots could be moved away from the eroding shoreline. And the image just speaks to me as what is the plan? Next slide. So a little further south, still at the Marine Reserve, a house at 96 Terrace on Seal Cove Beach was destroyed by fire in 2018. It's, according to the contour map, it's 20 feet above sea level. The new owners of the property plan to rebuild in the same location with a CDP exemption. That's in process. The status of the riprap boulders in the lower image is being investigated. It all belongs to the 97 Beach property. Okay, next slide. So the Seal Cove neighborhood, we've approved some development there recently. So you can see here, 1979, there's 4 houses west of Ocean Boulevard. Those are all gone now. They were relocated or demolished. The left-hand side of this road has been closed due to permanent deep landslide. And the north of this area is the continuation of FMR, Pillar Point Bluff Park, that can naturally erode with gradual retreat of any trails and fencing. So it's not a concern. And next slide. So I'm not going to read all this, but the deed restricted conditions of approval prohibiting future armoring is something that was started. The Coastal Commission did that first in Princeton in 1999, and then would on appeal of projects, and continued to, when these were appealed to the Coastal Commission, the conditions would be added. And then finally in 2019, the county started doing this themselves, which of course reduces the number of appeals. Next slide. Then there were some additional conditions added, like at the Valimar Bluff, it was conditions were added to preserve public coastal access with the moving easement and sensitive habitat. Of course, that was agreed to by the applicant as the process was going through, permitting. And then also at the bottom, you're familiar with this Ocean Boulevard property where we approved a CDP between Procedure and Bernal, where they only have access through Ocean Boulevard. And so precedent was, I assume, established here. The county added conditions that they are not required to maintain access on the road or utility infrastructure to serve that development. And when the road fails. Next. So Princeton shoreline, I'm going to be very brief because it's all wrapped up in the shoreline management plan. And there's a lot of things going on here we don't have time for today. But just the 1972 image here on top, you see the Romeo Pier and the warehouses that were built at that time. They sensibly built them well off the beach next to the road. And then you see in the lower image what it looks like today. Next slide. So in 1997, the zoning hearing officer approved 7, quote, warehouses with caretaker units on Ocean Boulevard, which is a paper street on the beach, all substandard 20-foot wide lots that were all previously under the same ownership. And these buildings are now luxury waterfront homes. Emergency armoring was added before construction of the last building was even complete. In 1999, an 8th building in this waterfront row had CDP appealed to the Coastal Commission with a condition added, deed restricted prohibition of shoreline armoring. This was a first for the mid-coast. Next slide. Lateral beach access at the foot of Romeo Pier was blocked in 2009 by illegally placed riprap trucked down the street from 380 Princeton Avenue, boulder stockpile stored there since Coastal Commission riprap enforcement action in 2008. That 2008 enforcement action, to my knowledge, is the only armoring enforcement action that has occurred in the Mid-Coast. I could be wrong. I'm not aware of any other. And the rocks in front of on the beach are still there. Next slide. So we have long-range planning guidance by the state and others. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the Coastal Commission revised three key sea level rise guidance documents at the link. And there's the 2021 Half Moon Bay LCP update, which follows Coastal Commission guidance. I urge you to go to the link and compare the Half Moon Bay Chapter 7 shoreline hazard policies with the county LCP policies in Chapter 9 hazards component. Half Moon Bay is particularly appropriate resource due to the proximity and even overlap with the unincorporated mid-coast along Marauder Road and Surfers Beach. Next slide. So we have long-range planning by the county listed here for your reference. I'm not going to read this, but I just, my point here, the county lacks updated LCP shoreline hazard policies such as Half Moon Bay has done. Next slide. And we're also going to skip Pillar Point Harbor Breakwater and Surfers Beach. Big issues, a lot of agencies involved. Next slide. Miramar. This image, the top image here is 2016 high surf. But in the more recent January storms, some restaurant front windows were broken out by storm waves. The building in the image at the bottom is the same building from the 1930s. It was there then, and you can see the width of the road. There was the road and perpendicular parking on the side, and then a gentle slope directly down to the surf. And compare that to the road above. It's so narrow you couldn't park there, and then just the pile of riprap and a drop off down to the water. Next slide. So from the natural bluffs at Marauder Surf County Park, as these bluffs retreat, new armoring rocks have been privately placed inland where Miramar, straight ahead, is starting to become a peninsula jutting out over the beach. The fixed back beach in front of the revetment prevents lateral beach access except at very low tides. Next slide. So this is the neighborhood, aerial view of the neighborhood fronted by Marauder Road and the revetment, 3 or 4 blocks there. And Mateo Creek at the bottom, the bridge, this is a pedestrian bridge across the creek, part of the coastal trail, and that has it should open this year. It was closed for 2 years because it failed, and it has been rebuilt in the same hazardous location. So who will armor the north side of this evolving peninsula? How long will the county keep repairing Marauder Road and revetment? Next slide. This is the last slide. So the image at the top, 1972, of this neighborhood. And there's Marauder Road, and you can see they've already started armoring it. And there you have all the development that we have been approving there, and that is increasing all the time. And the options for managed retreat become increasingly difficult as infill development continues. So here again, what is the plan? And that's it. Any questions or discussion? I hope there is interest in this topic.
Yes, there absolutely is. I want to thank you for Commissioner Ketchum for bringing these matters to the Planning Commission's attention. I think they are very important, and they pose some very serious challenges and issues that I agree need to be addressed. your presentation contained a lot of questions, and I'd be happy to try and address some of those that are of greatest interest to the commissioners. And let me start by trying to address what I think are some of the biggest questions raised by your presentation. And I think one of the overarching questions is that we've got these really pressing challenges, difficult, complex challenges to solve. Who's going to take care of it? Who's going to take the lead, right? And I think it's important to recognize that we've got many players working together in some instances, and other players who need to come to the table to help address these challenges. When you're dealing with the immediate shoreline environment, those players include the State Coastal Commission and the State Lands Commission, who are essentially the landlords. The State Lands Commission is the landlord for any land that is below the mean high tide line. And that is per your public doctrine, in recognition of the public doctrine, is managed by the state for public purposes. So, for example, when riprap falls onto the beach in an area that's mean high tide, it's an encroachment onto state lands, and state lands can play a role in working with both the county and the Coastal Commission in taking action to require the responsible party whose rock fell onto the beach to take care of that. Similarly, when it comes to permitting matters, if development will extend below the mean high tide line, it is within the permitting jurisdiction of the Coastal Commission, as well as the enforcement jurisdiction of the Coastal Commission. So there's an opportunity for all parties to work together. County parks as well, in the properties adjacent to Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, where rocks are falling onto county property. As the landlord, county property can work with our code enforcement divisions to try and clean that up. So with regard to the risks of shoreline erosion, there's risks to existing properties and there's risks to vacant properties. As you noted, under the Coastal Act, existing development has a right to construct shoreline armoring, but only where necessary and only where impacts are mitigated to the full extent feasible. And as your presentation noted, with the leadership of the Coastal Commission and the county following suit, we are exploring all opportunities to avoid shoreline armoring where there's an existing development at risk, including relocating the structure and taking other actions that will avoid hardening of the shoreline. With regard to the vacant properties, I think we've broadly interpreted our policies that state that no development should require the installation of a seawall. And we've incorporated conditions recommended by the Coastal Commission, as you noted in your presentation, in an effort to ensure that if a vacant property adjacent to eroding shoreline wants to develop, that developer understands the risk of the development and understands that they will not be allowed to construct a seawall in the future. I think the biggest challenges are in the communities where we have this mixture of existing development, vacant properties, and a highly eroding shoreline. And I think the solution to those areas require kind of a sub-regional approach as we're taking along the Princeton shoreline, where we look at all options and we try and come up with a uniform plan for addressing the challenge so that it's not project by project, parcel by parcel. The Miramar example is another example of a community where that sort of approach is warranted. It's really, we've been handed a very challenging hand of cards, if you will, based on the action of our predecessors, right? the development of those shoreline parcels and the armoring of that road that occurred in 1971 prior to the Coastal Act set the stage for additional development that is very difficult to say no to under the laws of the United States related to private property rights. That's not to say that it can't be done, and I want to express the department's desire to come up with effective solutions. I think coming up with effective solutions requires a careful and strategic approach, which I'm wondering what that noise was. I don't know. Maybe that'll make it better. So I thought somebody was banging on the wall. The strategic approach I'm speaking of really involves taking a careful assessment of risks. And one of the challenges we faced is that risk assessment and the variables that you plug into those formulas have been changing over time. And while the risks are imminent and action is needed, the one benefit of the time that we've taken in terms of strategizing our approach here is we've got a lot better data to work with now and a lot more technology to work with. And so the strategic approach involves taking, a comprehensive look at these risks and potential solutions and setting forth a policy basis that you can then follow up with implementing regulations to achieve the objectives of a plan. And that's just standard planning procedures. And I think it's reflected in general planning law is that, you start with your land use plan and your land use designations and your development policies and objectives. And then you develop specific regulations that carry out those policies so that they can be effectively implemented. And that's why we believe it's appropriate for us to complete the update to the safety element of the general plan prior to undertaking an update to our local coastal program implementing regulations. I think through the safety element, we will go through the hazard assessment in a comprehensive, detailed manner that will inform our policy development, which will then dictate the solutions that we intend to implement through specific regulations. In the meantime, I believe that we have the tools and regulations at hand to address the concerns that you've raised. I think one of the greatest challenges is resources and designating, those resources that are required to, for example, ensure that all existing seawalls are properly maintained and that if they've fallen apart, that they're appropriately cleaned up. Just, attempting to do that over the stretch of the coastline that was identified in your presentation is a resource-intensive project that, as I noted in the beginning, would require the cooperation and collaboration of many agencies. I think one of the benefits of Commissioner Ketchum bringing this item to the hearing today is that, and from other efforts by Commissioner Ketchum and others to address these issues, is it has caused us to initiate collaboration with the Coastal Commission on taking enforcement action. There's current collaboration going on between our agencies with regard to the site at 96 Terrace that was contained on your property. I know there's been prior collaboration with Parks and the Coastal Commission on some of the seawalls at Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. So I think there's an opportunity for us to build on that momentum And if we could obtain more resources, then I think that effort would go more quickly and more effectively. I think that's it's a hard ask at this point, difficult ask, I mean, because as you know, our code enforcement division has been tasked with addressing concerns about farm worker housing all up and down the coastline, which is a major lift and resource intensive as well. That being said, it is our intent to continue on the enforcement actions that and investigations that are underway and that need to be initiated. And we appreciate folks like Commissioner Ketchum bringing these things to our attention and, you know, checking in on the status, because that does help make sure that we are making continual progress. So I will leave it at that and be happy to answer any more specific questions or general questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, Stephen. Commissioner Serrano-Kwan, did you have any questions for Commissioner Ketchum?
I don't have any questions. I look forward to working on this project. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. So.
Thank you so much for all the effort you have put in, Commissioner Ketchum, because we don't get to learn about the coast side and the problems of the coast side and what all goes on there and the history behind it. So between you're bringing it to our attention and Steve Monowitz telling us about how he is using that information and doing something with it. I think that is really eye-opening for me at least, to see what are the different things that are going on there. So some of the these may be some small concerns that are and details that I'm trying to understand here is what are the general things other than, of course, updating these regulations? Steve, you mentioned updating the safety element for the LCP and other regulations for that. But by the time those things take so long, by the time they come out, we need to do more, right? Or additional factors need to be taken into account in order for those to be used, or they are not. What I would say is they are not completely enforceable anymore because we need to take more things into account now. They are not complete, no longer complete. Do you?
I think I understand what you're saying, and if I was to rephrase it, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, is that, you know, the update of our policies and regulations is not occurring at the same pace as the risks are evolving. And if we don't update our policies and regulations in a timely manner, our ability to enforce these new standards are called into question. But in that regard, I would like to point out that the Coastal Commission does provide a backstop, and they not only help the county and other coastal jurisdictions do a better job in addressing these issues, even under the existing regulations, but through their appellate authority, if a local government does not take it to the furthest that we can under existing law, then they usually step in and do so. So I believe that we have some backstops to help address that issue. I also I just remembered that I forgot a very important player in the players that I was mentioning is working on this and has come up at prior hearings. That's One Shoreline. And Commissioner Ketchum may know that on April 19th, they just released some guidance for addressing shoreline erosion. It's focused more on the bay side, but I think it's got some applicable recommendations that will be considered on the ocean side as well. And so here's another example of policy development that's occurring now, whereas the risk is now, and we need these policies and regulations in place as soon as possible. So I think that we're working to get them in place as soon as we reasonably can. And in the meantime, taking as broad of an interpretation of the existing policies and rules as we can to give us the greatest ability to address these issues.
Great. Just a question. What organization is One Shoreline?
It started out as the San Mateo County Flood Control and Resiliency District. Did I get that right? Yes, I'm getting an affirmative from council. Okay. That's too much of a mouthful, so they went with One Shoreline. And the reason they were created is because many of the creeks and streams on the bay side of the county did not have any flood control district. And if there was a flood control district, they had limited ability to address current needs. So One Shoreline was formed as the county entity that has both planning and regulatory oversight for development related to shoreline protection and flood control.
Okay, so it's an entity within the county.
That is correct.
It's not some outside agency.
It's independent.
Independent.
I can't remember if it's actually a joint powers authority or statutorily created by the legislature. It's one of the two.
Yeah, it was created by the state.
Yeah. So it is essentially, it's independent of the county and it has its own management and governing board.
Okay, great. Yeah, I learned a lot. Okay. And a lot of terminology as well, because some of these terms, we have heard them in the past, but really do not know exactly what they mean. So went and looked it up to understand. Thank you so much. Well, I'm sorry, I cannot really ask questions because there's a lot of information for me. Yeah,
I knew we needed a first step. So that's what this was. I think, may I?
Good.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to remind the commission that we should also plan on taking public comment at some point in the process.
Okay.
Oh,
we will.
Just to follow up on what you said about One Shoreline's recently released guidance document, it is for the bay side, and they say in there they acknowledge that and refer you to the Coastal Commission guidance page where that has their 3 documents there. I do think it's useful to look at the results of development approvals as the years go by, and think about, have our policies and standards brought good results? And if not, is it because we didn't apply them adequately, or because the policies and standards need revision? And I would just, I mean, you brought up again about needing to wait till the safety element is done. And we have the, what is it, local hazard, whatever it is. And it's like this countywide, county city approach, I don't picture it giving us the wording that we need. And once again, I would just urge you, or I could put this together just as something to review, to the Half Moon Bay LCP policies that they have just, just to read through them and think, oh, that would be a good one to have about, cleaning up your rocks or whatever it is. And it's like, or putting, because already the county is applying this no future armoring. It's not in our documents. We're just doing it because the Coastal Commission does it that way. So maybe there's something in the Half Moon Bay that, if you can't actually go through and get this certified, that you can say, well, let's just use this now, because it would bring so much clarity. And for us here, when we're approving a project, and I know when we first started doing this, that my colleagues had never heard of such a thing, that, oh, you'll have to move your house in 50 years and are you sure you know what you're getting into, kind of a thing. And it's like, 50 years is not long enough. I mean, we all know a house, the lifespan of a house it should be 100 years. And anyway, even if you just look through the Half Moon Bay policies for shoreline hazards, for other things like the piece on that we now add about no future arming, maybe there's other things in there that we could just sort of start using if we can't get this into a certified. I mean, I read it over and I'm so envious that we don't have that. It's very difficult to be asked to approve a project, which, as Mr. Fox pointed out, we're within these certain constraints that we have to, and it feels like, knowing what we know, that we're doing this with blinders on. It feels very uncomfortable.
We will certainly look at the Half Moon Bay policies, and I think when it comes to the work that's required to carry through a LCP amendment, focus on the things where adding the regulations will make a difference. I mean, the requirement to clean up a seawall whose rocks start falling onto the beach, we've got that ability right now. So we don't need to wait for an LCP amendment to do that. So I would say if we're going to invest the effort into an LCP amendment, it should be to incorporate new regulations that give us abilities that we don't currently have. And although the regulations might not read as well as we'd all like them to, they still provide us with some very broad authority to achieve many of the objectives that you've brought up, I believe. But I don't mean to question the long-term need for an update to our LCP policies. I think we're in agreement with that. It's just a matter of timing and sequencing, and we'll continue to dialogue with you on that.
Thank you. So we'll open for public hearing. Do we have any speakers?
At this time, we do have 3 hands raised. We will start with Carlisle and Young. As a reminder, each speaker has 5 minutes to speak. Carlisle, please unmute your microphone and begin speaking when you see the timer.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This was really a fantastic presentation. And I have questions. It's not, hopefully you guys can answer it. I don't know if you're just going to sit there like the cow watching the train go by when the public asks questions, but I hope not. One of the questions I had was, I see that there's a lot of county approved after the fact riprap things that you mentioned. And I guess that was one of the first ones you mentioned was at the former chart house. And then the second question I had was, I mean, I don't know how often that happens, if that was just the only one, or if a lot of people put in riprap and see if they're going to get caught. As far as the 2018 riprap at the same location, I think you mentioned there was repair, and I've never heard of riprap repair. So is that where you had the dribbly concrete, or did they have to like pick up rocks that had washed down onto the beach? I don't really get it, but I'm hoping that you're going to be able to get them to push that riprap back because it's not a restaurant anymore. And I've heard stories that they're using it for raves and private parties and stuff. So I don't know if they have a use permit for that. Anyway, maybe you could ask the presenter or the person operating the slides to go back to the slideshow on page just 20 through 22 is where I have some questions. And that's regarding my neighborhood, which is Seal Cove. And I'm pretty concerned because we don't have any riprap in our neighborhood that I'm aware of, except the part at 96 Terrace Avenue. And I don't know, are they going to put up the slide of, especially slide 22, but the first one was on page 20.
Not no,
you can't.
No.
Okay, well, you have it in your package, maybe. What I wanted to say about that was the neighborhood that I live in, there was one block that hardly had any houses on it when I moved here in 1988. And that's the block between Alvarado, Bernal, Ocean Boulevard, and I think it's Presida Avenue. And the two houses that were there was 961 Ocean, which was, I think, built in the 60s, and 999 Ocean Boulevard, which is on the corner of that block or that plat. Anyway, those are the only two. And since then, they've squeezed in a little house in between. And Steve mentioned that they were not going to allow that guy to do anything. If he can't get in and out, if the road fails, the county's not going to fix the road. And since that time, another lot sold on the other side of 961 Ocean, and you've already granted it. Well, I'm assuming you granted an approval for it because it's already under construction on the other side of the little one-story house at 961 Ocean. On the block following that, which is the corner of Bernal and the county park at the Bluffs, that property just hit the market for $4.7 million this week. So it's, I think the address is 1001 Ocean. So my question to Steve and the rest of you, since you sit on the Planning Commission, is it seems as though the county's been selling permits for the vacant lots in Seal Cove with the full knowledge that they're very close to the eroding bluff. And just recently, since the storms, County DPW came and closed the block of San Lucas Avenue, which is my street, between Ocean and Del Mar. And they just put up sawhorses, no explanation, no county hearing to say that we're not going to fix it. We're waiting till we can get the money to fix it or anything. They just closed it, period. No conversation. So I think there's some similar development issues in West Miramar where, you're still selling permits to property owners that have vacant lots and letting them build. But I guess you don't have any real big plans to, maintain roads or anything else. So my basic question is, if Seal Cove lot owners are still required to pay taxes and the county's deferring the maintenance of the roads and the rest of the neighbors that already own and been paying taxes out here for a long time, what do you mean by a sub-regional approach and that sort of thing? I know you need it to be strategic and you need it to be in part of the property owner's rights. But if you keep selling permits just because you have to maintain the roads. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 3 additional hands raised at the time. Our next speaker is Dan Haggerty, followed by Lenny Roberts. Dan, please unmute your microphone and begin speaking when you see the timer.
Yes, good morning, everyone, again, and thank you, Lisa, for your presentations. Very, very important. Obviously the biggest problem is how do we keep the sand on the beach? That's the problem we're talking about. And it's clear that riprap has not been working well over the years. There's plenty of examples. I haven't heard a whole lot of talk about the ideas of sand dune construction. I drive by Pacifica Linamar all the time, and I see there's a mountain of sand growing there. They've got, certain areas not for people to walk on because of the sensitive habitat, the vegetation that's growing. It seems to be thriving. That's one example. Another example. Now, obviously, the most natural solution would be the best, no doubt. But I wanted to just raise the information that the O'Shaughnessy seawall up in San Francisco Ocean Beach, it's just below the Cliff House. A lot of people know about this seawall. Construction was started in 1912 or 16, I believe. So this seawall has been working for over a century. There's a particular design of this seawall that I just haven't seen anywhere else. I was just up there a couple weekends ago, and there's sand blowing over the top of this wall. Another thing to be aware of is that this particular seawall and this ocean beach, because of the history of the Cliff House over geez, I don't even know when the first one was built. But there's more than a century of well-documented photos, because this is a highly global tourist spot, and all these photos over the decades. I think it's Outside Lands up outsidelands.com up in that has you can dig through the site and just see over the years photos of the beach, and you could see how over the century sand has gone up and down and up and down. But I know that every location has a different a different dynamic with the ocean currents and sand and all that. But I remember, I grew up in that area, and I remember, being on the sidewalk, the promenade there, right just on the other side of the wall, and seeing the ocean water coming up almost to the top steps. I think it has gone onto the sidewalk over the years, but right now there's sand. I mean, I think 75 yards from the wall all the way out. And I want to reiterate, obviously, when the ocean hits the shore, the absolute best way to take away the energy, the damaging energy of the waves, as when those waves hit the sand, and it just dilutes the power. So the key is, how do we keep the sand on the beach? And I am no expert at all. I just wanted to share this because I have seen it with my own eyes up at Ocean Beach, and I've been up and down the Oregon dunes. I've seen a lot of sand dunes, and I've seen. Well, anyway, I'm just very interested in all discussions moving forward, and thank you again, Lisa. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lenny Roberts, followed by Fran Pollard. Lenny, please unmute your microphone and begin speaking when you see the timer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is Lenny Roberts speaking for Green Foothills. Thank you, Commissioner Ketchum, for your excellent presentation. And I think the presentation really highlights one of the primary principles of coastal erosion. When you have a hard back edge to the beach, like we have on our bluffs and cliffs, and then, or even a near shoreline area that's lower, and somebody puts in riprap protecting or other shoreline protective structures to protect development. Eventually, because of the wave action, you're going to lose the beach. There's been many studies that document this. So over time, every time we put in hard structures armoring the back of the beach, the wave action and the literal transport of sand is going to eventually reach those structures, and it's, of course, this is exacerbated by sea level rise. So the critical thing that we really need to be concerned about is not allowing future armoring, which I'm very grateful that the commission is now adding that condition to proposed developments. But dealing with existing armoring, such as at the chart house, the best possible thing would be to remove that armoring. And those decisions are complicated. They have a lot of considerations, but for the long term, without the bluffs to continue sand supply and allowing the beach to be backed by something other than a hard structure, we're going to lose the beaches. So that's just my general comment. It's a very complicated issue, I know, for planners and for property owners. And it's going to get worse as time goes on because of the issue of sea level rise. Thanks very much for the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
Our next speaker is Fran Pollard, followed by Edmundo Lorenas. Fran, please unmute your microphone and begin speaking when you see the timer.
Hi, good morning again. I guess it's afternoon now. And thank you, Lisa, for doing that. It was a good presentation. When I saw your map, I wondered, why did you have Montero Moss Beach, Princeton, and skip to Miramar when El Granada is the most vulnerable town? And then I remembered, oh, right, that's the cherry stem, as we refer to the harbor, as Half Moon Bay took control of the west side up to the harbor. And so, but right now, I don't know if everyone's even aware that there's a big sinkhole in the coastal trail along just south of the breakwater. And it's been there, unless they fixed it in the last few days. I haven't been down this past week, but I think I heard at the Harbor District meeting last week that neither the county nor Caltrans was interested in it, something like that. Maybe Edmund can speak to that after. Anyway, that needs to be fixed. A big sinkhole that's about a foot from the highway. So even though it's not part of, it's in the city limits, I know the city is in the county, the highway is part of the county. Caltrans has to be nudged to get something done. I would hope that you could get in contact with both the city of Half Moon Bay and Caltrans and get them to fix that before we lose the highway. And please don't put us through another battle with Caltrans wanting to move. We're okay with them moving the highway on their 60-foot right-of-way. but you know, we've been planning for the Burnham Park. I think we just renamed it to Granada Community Park. And we've been planning that for decades. So, and it's hopefully in the process of getting approved and getting built soon. So we don't want the highway coming on that. We don't want, and I know everybody will be outraged if they try to bring it inland, which is what they've threatened. So the 60-foot right of way just in front, just past the breakwater is the only part of the highway that's in danger. And that's the only part needs to be repaired. But hopefully if they repair the sinkhole now, that'll last another few years. I hope. And yeah, as far as rock riprap, that's ugly and it keeps going into the ocean during storms. So I like the walls, a solid straight wall. It's not going to go into the ocean. The ocean will splash onto it. But that's like Dan was saying earlier, besides at the Cliff House, Santa Cruz. My husband and I used to take our bikes and we'd ride on that wall with the path, seawall with the path on top that people can walk and ride on, and people love that. And everybody goes down there to use it. I know in the last storm that we've all had problems in the last storm. They had a sinkhole there. They've probably fixed it by now. I don't know. But anyway, that'll last a lot longer than riprap. So, and I think it's attractive and everybody enjoys it. And maybe the sand, oh, and the Harbor District is in the process of speaking with the Corps of Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers, who built the breakwater in the first place and stopped the sand flow. They're talking about modifying that breakwater so the sand can flow again. So I think once there's a solid wall, the sand can flow down again. Hopefully that'll get done in my lifetime, I hope. and that's it. I think that could solve a lot of problems. I hope so. And I hope the planning department will get in touch with Caltrans and Half Moon Bay to get that sinkhole fixed before it undermines the highway. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pollard.
Our final speaker is Edmundo Lorenas. Edmundo, please unmute your microphone and begin speaking when you see the timer.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you all. Some of what I'm going to say has already been said, but I think it's worth saying. And most importantly, I'd like to thank you, Commissioner Ketchum, for an excellent presentation and for bringing this topic to this meeting. I'm heartened to hear that county planning is aware of these issues and moving towards actions to strengthen their ability to enforce these policies that protect public lands and the environment and our beaches. I'd like to add just a few comments. No question that this is a complex problem that requires protection of the public and private properties. I think we all agree on that. However, coastal armoring is a government-sanctioned taking of the public. Sometimes the loss is immediate due to placement of armoring on public lands, and other times it takes years as the structure fails. The Montara State Marine Protected Area shoreline, where Pillar Point Bluffs, Fitzgerald Reserve, and Montara State Beach have their lands, is littered with debris from failed armoring. Most importantly, placement of hard armoring almost always causes loss of the beach in front of the armoring. This is also a public taking with no mitigation available other than removal of the armoring. We lose the beach every time there's hard armoring, and I think all of you who drive on Highway 1 and look at what's happening at the southern end at Surfers Beach can see it. Many of the projects coming before you represent opportunities to enforce managed retreat and other modern methods of protecting coastal lands from erosion, such as living shorelines. The most important action by permitting agencies is to deny permits for armoring and development in areas that are at risk. Any walk along the county shoreline, you will see properties that are being developed, especially in the area of Miramar and Pillar Point Bluffs. And I agree with Lisa Ketchum's statement that 50 years is not enough. So while the county is using all its enforcement tools available now to protect our shorelines and continues to state the stated efforts to add policies and legal tools, please consider adding legal tools that expand that boundary. And thank you for this opportunity to speak and your hopefully continued strides towards protecting the public's right to coastal access. Thanks.
Thank you.
That is the end of public comment via Zoom.
Okay. And I don't see anybody here for
We have
in the
speakers in
public.
chambers.
Okay. So seeing no more public interest, I close the public hearing. Any other comments, Steve?
Not from staff, just
Nothing,
thanks
no.
again to Commissioner Ketchum. Thanks to the public for participating. I think it was an excellent discussion and look forward to continuing to work with you all on these matters.
Any other comments? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. We got good public response. So we move on to item 5, correspondence and other matters.
Yes, thank you, Chair Gupta. The only correspondence that we received, that the commission received, was with regard to today's items. I think all those items of correspondence have been covered. So I'm ready to move on to the next item, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
I do not have a study session planned for our next meeting. I'd like to remind the commissioners that we only have one meeting in May. It's on the 4th Wednesday of the month, so that's May 24th. We've got 3 items on that agenda. One is a coastal development permit and some other permits required to make some roadway improvements to what's known as Whiting Ridge Road. This is a road that goes up Montera Mountain to serve the telecommunication facilities up there. So the permit is for both repairs to that road and also to renew and improve some of the telecommunication facilities that are on top of the mountain. We've got a design review and grading permit for a new residence in the unincorporated Devonshire area. And we have an application by the Peninsula Humane Society and the SPCA for a resource management use and grading permits to construct an animal sanctuary facility on Pescadero Creek Road in Lomamar. So this is a facility that includes facilities for dogs, cats, veterinary facilities, and so forth to care for animals. And that concludes my report on the next meeting. I'm ready to move on to the director's report.
Go ahead.
First, I wanted to inform the commission that a lawsuit filed by Midcoast Eco challenging the Coastal Commission on their approval of the LCP amendments related to the Cypress Point housing project has been rejected. So that permit review is proceeding, and the LCP amendment that was required to facilitate the project is effective. I wanted to let the commissioners know that at the May 23rd Board of Supervisors meeting, the supervisors will be considering the appeal of the Sequoia Tract condominium subdivision approval that this commission granted. I wanted to update Commissioner Ketchum on the situation with AmeriGas in that they've been working on the logistics for removing both the tank as well as the fence. And we anticipate to have a schedule for the removal of those facilities and the fence by the end of this week. Before they can remove the tank, they will need to make sure all the petroleum gas is removed, or propane gas that is. And so they are making appointments with Coast Fire to be in attendance when they do that. With regard to the Moss Beach Chevron site, the building permit required to make the improvements that were required by the commission's action is scheduled to be issued this week. So we anticipate that construction of the improvements at that site will commence shortly after issuance of the permit this week. As you may have heard on the news, the Ninth Circuit Court issued a ruling on the city of Berkeley's prohibition of natural gas infrastructure within buildings, which has a potential impact on the county's REACH codes. That case is still in the early stages of litigation, and the REACH codes remain in effect, but we will be watching it closely to see how subsequent rulings may impact the county's REACH codes. Finally, I wanted to let the commissioners know that just a few hours ago, we received the comments from HCD in response to our housing element update submittal. We have not yet had the opportunity to review the comments, which appear to be fairly extensive, but not out of the ordinary in comparison to what we've seen other jurisdictions receive. And our intent is to come back to the Planning Commission to present to you the changes to the housing element that we think will be necessary to comply with HCD directives. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? About these REACH codes, if it is for Berkeley, how does it impact our county?
Well, the essence of the decision was that Berkeley as a local government overstepped their authority by limiting the ability of its residents to use gas appliances. And the regulation of appliances and their efficiency is the responsibility of the federal government. So if the decision that was reached stands, then it could set a precedent that would affect all local governments and their ability to limit the use of gas within structures.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That brings us to questions and updates from commissioners. And if there are none, I think we're ready to adjourn.
There are no more questions. So meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to Mercedes and Tet for doing a great job of seeing us through today.
Meeting went